would like to add something or ask something? Oh, great. Okay, yes.
With the Stooges in the... you touched on... Well, first of all, I'd like to ask, obviously you've talked about humour and music in a positive way. What happens when you listen to music that you really hate? Or, I mean, I don't know, other people may like Webern or Schoenberg or something, but I would have a sort of physical pain. So does it have the kind of equal and opposite effect? I mean, some people, Purcell is lovely, but some people may hate Purcell. So they might indeed have been grimacing.
Sure. And I was shocked to find that a friend of mine didn't like Purcell. How could you not like Purcell? But no, it's true.
So is there an effect? Is there a...
There can be, yes. Yes. It's a better effect. It's a more effective if you like it. So the research on even academic, even problem-solving effects is benefited by preference. There is a cutoff point. I mean, if you prefer, there's also aspects, if you look at, again, technical pattern recognition ability. I mean, it needs to be complex. But choose jazz instead of Mozart then, or Turkish classical music instead of, just as complex. Duke Ellington, I wrote a paper called The Ellington Effect. I was doing a play off of the Mozart effect, because Ellington could get pretty darn complicated. So, and I looked at, again, Turkish classical music, Indian raga. So anyway, so if one's looking to for something complex that they like, but if the effect is just to feel good, choose whatever you want. Now, in terms of negative effect, it can. For example, in some therapeutic settings with, for example, maybe troubled teens, notice sometimes there's the heavy metal or there's the angry punk music, whatever, and you think, oh, that must be bad for them. Actually, in some ways, it's cathartic. It can be very, you're letting an emotion out in a safe way that needs to be let out, so it can be used therapeutically, as long as it's not too much, as long as it doesn't generate anger, but it can be an outlet for releasing anger. And it's also, the lyrics do matter, because there are, for example, there's, one of my students was a vegan activist, and he got his music out. It was anger, but anger at violence and anger at, so you can do it in a healthy way. Like with the group I worked with, hip-hop, I used hip-hop music because it was in New York City, but it was about, keep on moving, don't give up now, let's go together, or let's change the environment, or that kind of thing, something positive. So lyrics can matter, because again, I think that artists out there, especially if you're reaching young audience, should be careful. But you mentioned Schoenberg and some of the atonal music. It is an intellectual exercise in a lot of ways, and it can be satisfying in that sense. Schoenberg reminds me of Picasso, where they could do the classical quite well, but they just got bored with it, and so they were having fun. And I have fun. The more you learn, the more you know about the foundational techniques. It is interesting to see how one can play with it. But one could argue, because if you look at the physics of music, the harmonies that we have all come to know and love do exist in nature, and then the overtone series exists out in outer space. I mean, even human babies, as well as even baby chicks, prefer consonance over dissonance, and from day one. So we are kind of, and then we learn the music of our culture, which we like even more. But if from day one, consonance over dissonance, there is a physical element. So it can be harmful, especially, of course, if it's too loud. But that dissonance, and if you think of it evolutionarily, I speak a lot about evolution in music, but if we think of it, dissonant sounds in nature can be pretty dangerous. You hopefully want to run from them. Something scraping up against, trees scraping up against something metal or something really loud, it freaks us out, you hope. And so that kind of saved us. So the person that ran from those dissonant or loud sounds passed on their genes because they're the one that survived. They didn't get hit by the tree that was fallen on them. And also across cultures, every single culture that's been studied has lullabies. So the child who was lulled into the sound of the mother's voice, perhaps you take two children, and the one that liked the lullaby could have survived. So music also, as laughter, it's unifying, and but one of the other perhaps evolutionary aspects of it is it allows us to express that emotion. People who don't express emotion have a higher rate of heart disease, for example. And sadly, boys are told at a young age, boys don't cry. And I think that's a crime, because boys need to cry sometimes. And then if any of us doesn't cry, we might get angry because we're holding it in, but it's okay for a guy to be angry. There's this social stuff, someone's calling me. But, the need to, if we think of a funeral, or why do we like those sad songs, possibly a couple of things. It allows us to feel that emotion and to mourn for it. Some people who have not been able to mourn, it's only music that gets them to let it out, and tears themselves are healing. But also, we can also relate. Some of the sad songs, we like them because, I'm not alone. That's another aspect of it. But so music, evolutionarily speaking, has a lot of functions. So even sad music, can have a very helpful function as long as it's not overdone. But there is a point when it can be unhealthy, even physically, or we just naturally don't like it. But we can grow. The last thing I'll say on that, sorry, it's a long answer, but some of you might know that the famous, of course, Stravinsky, his Rite of Spring, which is one of the most favorite out there. When it was first played many years ago, it freaked people out so much there was a riot. They couldn't handle the dissonance in there. Now we're used to it. They put it in the scary movies. It functions also for scary tension. And if we don't, when dissonance can be very helpful if there's dissonance and then release. If you go, it's like more satisfying if there had been some dissonance. It's like a scary story or a story, there's a problem. You're not going to have a decent story if you don't have a problem to solve. And then, it's solved. The conflict is solved. Same thing in music. So that's another function of dissonance or, conflict or in music. Yeah. So, yes. Go for it.
Did you?
I
over-answered.
Because I had 4 different questions I was trying to hold in my head. And I was struggling. Unfortunately, you posed one of them. But maybe just to your point, that maybe it's not so much the connection between music and happiness. That is a connection, but it's maybe perhaps between music and well-being, as you mentioned, or emotional intelligence in a broader sense, right?
Sure.
Perhaps the different moods and so forth.
Yes.